Hello everyone, I'm Bob McFarland, the software developer on the Save the Cat team. I'll be your host as we take a look at developing your novel by chapter. Normally in Save the Cat, you would take advantage of the famous Blake Snyder beat sheet and use it as your guide as you develop your story. But some novelists expressed interest in developing their story by chapter instead of using the beat sheet. Let's take a look at what that's all about. First, the novel by chapter option is only available if you have the premium or pro level. Since I'm working in the pro level, I'll click the Novel by Chapter button to start the new project. I'll give it a name, one chapter after another, and click Save. The project gets set up and we're ready to get started. This type of project starts with one section and one chapter in that section. You can see here that our first section has been called The Story Begins, and the board has been laid out with one row and one column. At the moment, it's hard to see that since the board is larger than the visible area. I'm going to adjust the size of the board so we can see the layout a little better. I'll click the Resize button on the toolbar, then I'll click Size to Fit, then Save. Notice the board now shows the first section and the first chapter. But why sections, you may ask? Maybe you don't break your novel into sections, just chapters. We do this simply to help you organize your thoughts into smaller chunks. And, for a very practical reason, the board. If the board had only one section and a lot of chapters, you'd have to be scrolling back and forth way too far in order to get anywhere. So each section will have its own row, and each row will have a vertical section for each chapter. That way you can scroll up and down to move from section to section in your story and not have to scroll so far horizontally. Let's go ahead and add another section. I'll click the Novel button on the toolbar and I'll get a drop-down of options. I'll click Add Section. Then I'll click Yes to confirm. And now we have two sections on the board with one chapter in each section. The first section is called The Story Begins, and the second section is called Enter a New Phase. You can change these names. Here in the Beat section, you can see that we have the Enter a New Phase showing. I'm going to switch to the first section by selecting it in the drop-down. Now to change the name of a section, just change it right there. Now this is a good time to mention that if you do want to incorporate the beat sheet into your process, you could create a section for each beat, then change the section name to the name of the beat. The first beat in the beat sheet is the opening image, so I'll just type the new name, then tab out of the box. I confirm that I want to change the name, and it's changed. Now I'll go ahead and switch to the second section and change the name to Setup, the second beat. For the moment, I'll switch back to the first section. Now the next step would be to estimate how many chapters you need for each section. Let's say we can handle the opening image in 2 chapters. I'll change the chapters number to 2 and confirm that I want to change it. Notice now that the opening image section has split into 2 columns, one for each chapter. Also notice that the chapter in the setup section has automatically been renumbered to chapter 3. Let's add some more chapters to the setup section. I'll switch to that section. And let's say we need 5 chapters for our setup. I'll confirm it, and notice now that our setup section has 5 columns with each chapter numbered accordingly. Now you're not limited with having your chapter titles simply being Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and so on. You can change the name of them as well. Now I'm going to go back to the opening image section. Then I'll click the keyboard icon for Chapter 1. A pop-up appears where we can change the title. I'll just call it Introductions, then click the X to save it. Our new title appears in the list and on the board. Bear in mind that as you begin to develop your story, you can always add more sections and chapters. Okay, now what? Well, that depends on what you've already figured out for your story. Do you already have ideas for each chapter? Or is the story about a particular character and you have ideas for their story? Well, let's start with a character, just for fun. I'll click the Characters tab in the Story section. Notice we have several character types or categories. You can modify these in the Project Preferences under the Save the Cat menu. Just go into the Character Types list and make your changes. Let me show you. Here's our list. You can change the type title, the indicator color, and add or remove types. Oh, you can also change the order in the list by dragging them around. And you can also delete a type by dragging it to the trash can. Notice the checkbox at the bottom. If that is checked, the changes you make will be copied to your master preferences so you can use them in future projects. Okay, let's add our protagonist. I'll click the plus button for the main character category. The character detail window opens so I can give that character a name and define that character. I'll name this character Bob. Now I can define a fully developed character by coming up with a good description, their wants and needs. And I have lots of thought-provoking categories where I can capture my ideas for this character. There's also another tab we call the facts. It's a place for just that. Just the facts, ma'am. Now there's one more section I want to point out. It's called tracking. These are things you are literally tracking throughout the story for this character. You can see we have some different areas that you may need to track. All of these categories can be changed in the preferences, just like we did with the character types. Now just for fun, I'm going to add something we want to track for Bob. Let's add a flaw. I'll click the plus button in the flaws row. A window pops up where we can type the flaw. I'll type it in. And we click the X to save it. Now if you change your mind, just press the escape key. It'll go away. Okay, let's go back to the board. I'll close the detail window for now. Here's how you can track a character's arc through your story. I'll drag Bob onto the board and drop him in the first chapter. A window pops up where I can put in a note about where Bob is at this point in the story. Now I'm just keeping it simple here, but you real authors will know what makes sense for your story. I'll click the X to save my changes. Notice an eye icon has appeared on Bob's card. These are things we're watching or tracking. I'll click it to see all the items we're tracking. Now here's the flaw we entered. But at this point, he hasn't insulted anyone yet, so I'll click the keyboard icon to change the state of his flaw at this point. And I'll save it. Now let's drop Bob into Chapter 2. I'll type in my note. And we'll save it. I'll click the tracking eye and edit the flaw. So you get the idea. Now if you want to quickly hide all the tracking or show all the tracking, click the View menu, then Board, then Hide All Tracking. And to show all the tracking. Now you can do this with all of your characters and lay them out on the board in the order that things happen. You can also do this with locations, and if you have the Premium or Pro version, things and relationships. I'll let you explore those on your own. When you're ready to start working on the actual scenes or your chapters, you can simply add scene cards to the board. Some authors just add one scene per chapter, or maybe you'll have multiple scenes per chapter. Just add as many as you need. I'll click the Add Scene button to add a scene, then move it into Chapter 1. I'll give the scene a title and a brief description. All right, let's add a scene for Chapter 2. I'll give it a title and a description. So you get the idea. You can fill in the emotional change and conflict for each scene as well. And you can also indicate whether the emotional change is positive or negative by clicking on the plus/minus button. One click goes positive, another click goes negative, and a third click clears it. You can also set up to 6 color codes for each scene as a way to know that certain aspects of the story are carried in the scene. Perhaps you have 2 different points of view. You could add 2 scenes in the chapter and use a color code for each point of view. Click in one of the color code boxes and the color selector will open. I'll move it over here. Now I just drag the row that I want to use over the color box where I want it to go. For the Mac, when the cursor changes to a little curving arrow, you know you're in the right place. Drop it and there you go. If you're using the Windows version, again, don't try to drag the color box, but move the cursor to a place in the row until it changes to a little hand. That tells you that you can drag the row and drop it onto the scene card. Don't drag the actual color box. That doesn't work. Clicking the color box will allow you to change the color. Okay, you get the idea. I'll close the color code window. If a character appears in a chapter, I would suggest that you add them to the scene card by dragging and dropping them onto the scene like this. There, it lets me know that the character has been added to the scene. Let me show you why this is important. I'll open Bob in the detail view again, and I'll click the tab that looks like a stack of boards. You can see every occurrence of Bob on the board. That way you can focus in on a particular character's story. Now I'm going to close the window for now and show you another way you can focus on a particular character. It's called filtering the board. I'll click the filter button and the filter settings window pops open. I'm going to hide everything so all the selections are cleared. Next, I'll click on Bob in the list of characters. The check mark appears, and then finally I'll click Apply. And now the board only shows things related to that character. I can really focus on this character's story. Okay, let me reset the filtering so we can see everything again. Okay, if your creative juices are flowing and you want to start typing your manuscript, you can click the keyboard icon on a scene card to open it in the detail view. I'm going to arrange the window a little and change the split so we have more of the word processor. So you can see the word processor there in the bottom half, so click in and start typing. Be sure to click the save button every once in a while. Now it's easy to move through your scenes by clicking another scene at the bottom of the window or by using the arrows at the right and left to move between scenes. And if you hover the mouse over a scene card at the bottom, the scene card itself will pop up so you can review it for context. Now for the sake of moving forward, I pasted in some text for a couple of the scenes. So I'm going to close the scene detail window for now. After typing your manuscript into each scene and arranging the scenes in the right order, you can export the whole thing to a Word document. Let's take a look. I'll click the Story menu, then Export, then Word. First, the export creates a page for the section. We scroll down to our first chapter called Introductions, where we have all the text from our scene card. We scroll down to find chapter 2 and the text from our scene card in that chapter, and so on. We continue to scroll and find a page that identifies the start of our next section, the setup. And finally, placeholders for each chapter within that section. You can also export to a text file, but Word seems like the best choice. Now there is one more option. You can convert the whole thing to a single document and work on your manuscript in a single document rather than within scene cards. Under the Save the Cat menu, then Project Preferences, then Preference Settings, be sure that Use Single Document for word processing is checked. Then click the right menu under the Story menu or press Ctrl-W. This will open the single document word processing window. Now the first time you click the right menu for a project, you'll be asked if you want to start with a blank slate or convert your sections, chapters, and scenes. If you've gone to the trouble of arranging the scenes and typing them in the manuscript for them, I'd convert, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So just like the Word document, I have a page for my first section, then the first chapter, second chapter, and so on. The fun thing about using this method is that it keeps track of the word count for each day, and you can earn achievements. Check out the how-to video called Single Document Manuscript for more information. Okay, folks, that should give you a good idea how to use the novel by chapter option and to take advantage of all the tools you have at your disposal to develop and write a great novel. Thanks for watching.